Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Reign of Troy Radio, episode 470, coming to you on Monday, December 19th. We're going to look ahead to USC's big prize transfer portal commitment from Dorian Singer. Dorian, like the bad guy in the mask. Great name.
Is that the name of the bad guy in the mask? You
Yes.
know the name of the bad guy in the
Why
mask?
wouldn't I? Yeah, of course.
I don't
Uh,
know the name
no,
of the bad
Dorian
guy in the
Singer.
mask.
A huge get from SC in the transfer portal. We're going to look forward to other transfer portal news and developments, talk a little bit about early signing day coming up on Wednesday, and so much more. Open up the mailbag and all of that here on this episode. As always, you can follow us on social media. We're on Twitter and Facebook at Reign of Troy. You can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We are there. Email address, reignoftroy@fanside.com. I'm your host, Michael Castillo, joined along with my co-host, here in the Reign of Troy studio in Los Angeles, Alicia Dertola.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. We are back here on a Monday. Future podcast stuff to go over really quick. Today is us talking sort of like our last little newsy show. We'll be back Thursday with our next episode, looking back at what happened at early signing day. Next Monday will be the Cotton Bowl preview, looking ahead to the Cotton Bowl, which is 2 weeks from today. So a week from now will be the Cotton Bowl preview. And then next Thursday, we'll sort of have a pre-Cotton Bowl mailbag thing. I don't know. We're going to make it a little fun for the last episode of the calendar year as we get one more episode in before the actual bowl game, which will be Monday, January 2nd, 2 weeks from today, USC and Tulane. Locking Horns at Jerry World in Arlington, Texas. So that's what we got coming up in store. Looking forward to this one, though, talking about Dorian Singer and all of that. So you can always help us join the show here on YouTube and like the stream. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, and all of that helps grow the show. And then if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, give us a review, 5 stars, and you'll be like our best friend forever. And we'll even read your review on the show.
Yeah, and wax poetic about it, too.
Yeah, that's usually what we plan to do. But hey, there's a lot of news to get to, so let's just get into it. USC has gotten a huge commitment from Dorian Singer, the number 14 transfer prospect in the 24/7 Sports Transfer Portal rankings. That's a thing. Second team All Pac 12 wide receiver in 2022. You probably remember him because back at the end of October, he cooked the Trojans for 7 catches, 141 yards, and 3 TDs in SC's close win down in Tucson against the Arizona Wildcats. He led the Pac 12 in receiving yards. Alicia, this is as close of a plug and play replacement for Jordan Addison as SC could have gotten. And it's another weapon for the Heisman Trophy winner Caleb Williams to throw to in 2023.
Yeah, the rich get richer, and we do expect Jordan Addison to head for the NFL. It would be surprising if he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a really big pickup for USC. Going into next year, they were going to bring in a couple stud wide receivers for the recruiting class. So and return quite a few talented guys like Mario Williams and Kyle Ford and Brendan Rice, and all those guys were going to be coming back. So the receiver room wasn't going to be bad by any stretch, but losing Jordan Addison was definitely going to leave a void there. And to bring in someone like Dorian Singer, who, I mean, just watch those highlights back. The catches he was making were spectacular.
One-handed catches, getting his foot in down the sideline, the whole bet.
Yeah. Yes, just not the kind of guy who tore up USC secondary because USC secondary was vulnerable to it.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of guy who was doing that to a lot of different teams this year. Good teams like good defenses like Washington State, he tore up as well for his season high, I think. And yeah, just spectacular playmaker. So bringing him in now, now you have competition with Mario Williams to be the number 1 guy. I think going into this next season, the big question was going to be, is Mario Williams now your number 1 guy? And he was almost it by default. Now you go in and say, okay, guys, go out and earn every rep that you get, earn every target that you get, and we'll see who rises to the top. So Dorian Singer is definitely a guy we expect to rise to the top. Just huge pickup for USC's offense to keep chugging along as well as they were in 2022.
Yeah, I'm going to say you don't need a number one guy. I don't think there is
Not
such
in
a
this
thing
offense.
in
That's
this
fair.
offense. No, I think that Caleb Williams is someone who absolutely wants to distribute all around. And I think the offense is designed to sort of find that balance in the distribution. And you're looking back at, what Lincoln Riley did at Oklahoma. Yeah, you had guys who were the star players, your Westbrook, your CeeDee Lamb, and those guys, but it's not like there wasn't depth around those guys. Hollywood Brown, right? Like there was a whole bunch of wealth of talent in the receiving core. And I think that's what you're going to see next year because there's a million dudes. This, like, I feel like we've talked about this over the length of the decade that we've done this podcast about, is this the USC receiving core of all time? Like, could this be the deepest? Could this one be the most talented? We've talked about that in 2019 when SC had Michael Pittman, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Tyler Vaughns, Drake London.
Which, by the way, is the correct answer to that question.
Probably that, like,
Yeah.
that top four is really difficult to compete against.
Oh, and as Mike in the chat pointed out, Gary Bryant Jr. is also coming back.
Yeah, like next year, just off the top of my head, these are the guys SC has to throw to. So your number one and number two in any order, Singer and Mario Williams. Your number three, probably the best number three receiver in the country, Taj Washington.
Certainly the most underrated.
Yeah, and again, I don't think these numbers matter because you're going to find Taj Washington's going to lead SC in receiving probably a good third of the games anyways. And then you got Kyle Ford, you got Gary Bryant Jr., you got Michael Jackson the third. You expect to have, take a step forward. You still got two incoming 5-star commitments from Zachariah Branch and Mekhi Lemon. Where are you going to put them? Like you got Kyron Hudson. There's so many guys, and I'm probably forgetting like three of them off the top of my head right now. Brendan Rice,
yeah,
Kyron
like Hudson, CJ Williams.
How are you going to get the ball to all of these dudes? It is the perfect problem to have, 100%. I just don't be surprised if somebody ends up in the portal or someone ends up with some discontent, something, because there's a lot of guys there, and we're going to see what happens in spring ball and how it goes in the fall. But the best thing for SC is that when you get to fall camp, there is going to be a receiving core that is going to be insanely deep.
Yeah.
And outside of maybe Ohio State, I don't know who can, even sniff that kind of depth.
Yeah. And especially, Rama Murdy in the chat points out, many receivers is a good problem. Absolutely. Especially with this offense where Caleb is willing to spread the ball around. He doesn't necessarily fixate on one receiver all the time.
Yeah.
And what we saw this past year was different receivers having like their quarter at a time. Kyle Ford always had the two big catches that he needed to have. Taj Washington was the king of this, just like it's the Taj Washington show for a couple drives. And then, then it's Mario Williams getting a say or Jordan Addison getting a say. So that is one of the other things that I think is underrated here is USC this past year had to deal with injuries to the top of its receiving core. Jordan Addison was limited by injury for a nice chunk of the season. Mario Williams was limited by injury for a nice chunk of the season, and USC was able to survive that because of the depth that they have here, and that depth is only getting better. The only question left is, does that depth backfire in a way of guys getting through spring camp and then deciding to leave? But even if that happens at this point, if you are Lincoln Riley, you snap your fingers and the next guy comes. Like if one of the sort of third tier guys in this receiving core, someone like Kyron Hudson, who I really like Michael Jackson III, who I really like those guys who you really like, but there's only so many touches to go around for them. If they want to leave, then there will be no shortage of receivers out there who will say, "Oh, you mean go get to play for the Heisman winner? Go get to play in Lincoln Riley's system?
Yeah.
Sign me up." So that's the advantage that USC has at wide receiver. Now, if only they had that advantage, you know, on the offensive line or something, then I would have fewer things to worry about with this team. But at wide receiver, you can't go wrong.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, this is one of the things you want to do with the transfer portal in general. Is just when you are not only a major brand like SC, but when you are coming off of almost winning the conference and being the number one team in the regular season in the conference, and trying to be this bully in the conference for one more year before SC moves to the Big Ten, of course. Um, you want to be the guy that goes and just pillages all the good players from the good teams. I mean,
Yeah.
from the teams that maybe can't just continue to keep all their talent. And
Well, and now you don't have to worry about Dorian Singer going against you next year.
yeah,
That helps.
exactly. Yeah. Or Christian Roland Wade. Sorry, Christian Roland Wallace, which I feel like is a
There's a lot of names going on in that
it's a
name.
lot of Christian Roland Wallace.
Yeah.
Vaguely a tongue twister. Yeah. USC's new corner. Also from Arizona. 37 starts at Arizona. 169 career tackles, 18 pass breakups, and a couple of picks. He comes in having played 4 seasons at Arizona, one of those being the free COVID year. So that gives him 1 year of eligibility left. He has not redshirted. So officially 2 years to play one. But this is going to be a one and done kind of thing you would expect from Roland Wallace, another guy who tries to be next year's Mekhi Blackman for SC, right?
Yeah, I mean, if he was that guy, then USC just hit the jackpot. I don't know if I would go that far when you look at
But I'm just thinking just in terms of like,
the plug and play veteran who
yeah,
has a million. I mean, this dude has, um, has started 34, 35 games in his career.
37.
Pretty much every game since he was a freshman, pretty much every game that he could play, he was starting for Arizona. I want to give a shout out to Shotgun Spratling, who pointed out what I think is the sort of key to evaluating this addition for USC. Um, Roland Wallace was targeted 62 times. He gave up 34 catches, 378 yards, and 3 touchdowns this season. Giving up 3 touchdowns in a season is not terrible, according to Pro Football Focus. The only defensive back this season with a lower completion percentage against was Mekhi Blackman at 49.2%.
There you
So,
go. And
well, actually, 49.2% was Christian Roland Wallace. So that goes to show that that this guy, there was a conversation in the chat from your fave 5 head. I don't know how to say that in a we'll go with your fave. Um, who was saying, adding another wide receiver doesn't help doesn't fix the defense. No, certainly it doesn't fix the defense. There's no question about that. That's why USC is focusing much of their transfer portal attention on defensive guys. But when you add a guy like this, you take pressure off of your offense. You take him away from a conference rival who now you don't have to deal with him putting up 140 yards on you. In terms of Dorian Singer, when you add somebody like Christian Roland Wallace from Arizona, which has not been one of the better defensive uh, teams in the conference, but he's a guy who has a ton of playing experience, who was doing a decent job in a bad defense.
yeah,
Keon Bars is the same thing. So when your fave says USC trying to fix their defense with players from bad Pac-12 teams confuses me, they're either striking out or settling. Well, when it comes down to it, there aren't that many great defensive players in the portal. We will keep saying this. It's harder to find guys in the portal on defense than it is on offense, because the translation is just quicker on offense. But also, if you're going to get a rival Pac-12 corner to replace the rival Pac-12 corner that you got last time around, then the dude who has 30 plus games of playing experience, the dude who, take Pro Football Focus or leave him, who still was putting up numbers that compare to the other cornerbacks that USC already had. Like, at worst, you're getting a depth piece. At best, you're upgrading. So
yeah,
keep rolling.
yeah. keep Roland Wallace. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And yeah, we're going to see what the law firm of Christian Roland Wallace is able to do in USC's defensive backfield. Another guy who could, slot in there. And we talked about the plug and play for Dorian Singer. Roland Wallace could be that guy from McLeod Blackman. But of course, SC has dudes at the cornerback position still.
Return Sierra Wright and Damani Jackson.
Sierra Wright is back, and Damani Jackson's the guy that you expect to have the big step forward, the 5-star out of Mater Dei from last season, last recruiting class.
I think it's also flying under the radar a little bit that USC low-key had some injury issues at corner this year. Josh Jackson didn't play all year. That was because of injury. There were a couple sort of depth guys who could have made the climb up, who also were sort of missing. So the cornerback group, you really just need. I would approach the cornerback group like a sort of like shotgun, like with corners and receivers. Just get as many of them as you can, and then see who fits.
Like shotgun the weapon or shotgun the person.
Shotgun the weapon.
Okay.
No, what is it called? Like a blunderbuss or something like that, where you just like have a lot of ammunition in there.
Blunderbuss.
Yeah.
What's a blunderbuss?
It's like a big shotgun, like old school sort of weapon that's like.
Speaking of the mask, you go with a Tommy gun.
I mean, the whole point of those kinds of weapons is you don't have to aim them because they're just like.
I'm pretty sure you still have to aim.
I mean, you have to aim in the general direction, but you don't have to be accurate. You can just.
This is why we don't have an artillery podcast.
No, we do not. My knowledge of blunderbusses come from like video games that I've played that have them as a weapon. So
I hear blunderbuss, and I'm picturing like literally a bus that that 4 wheels potentially more.
I
than
could
that
be even
drives.
saying it wrong. I don't even know.
Sure. All right. Other transfer portal updates. USC. Starting linebacker Raylan Goforth has moved on to Montlake up in Seattle to be a Washington Husky.
Yeah, that's good for him. USC will end up playing him in theory if he carves out a role for him up at Washington.
Yep.
It'll be very interesting. I think that's going to be one of the things. USC doesn't have a ton of guys on, USC doesn't have like starters on defense that are leaving, but it will be interesting to track someone like Raylan Goforth, because here's the thing. If you leave USC as a starter at linebacker and you do okay at Washington and your replacements don't do well, or USC doesn't improve their defense, then there's going to be a microscope over whether or not USC was coaching those guys up well enough. Maybe it wasn't a talent issue. Maybe it really was a not getting the best out of players. So I will be following Raylan Goforth rather closely, in fact, because I think he's going to be a little bit of a measuring stick for USC's defense in a weird sort of comparison kind of way. That's imperfect, because obviously defensive schemes are different. Defensive, what happens is different. The people around you is different. All that kind of stuff. But it'll be interesting.
Yeah. Raylan Goforth might be gone, but one of the guys staying to transfer. I mean, for us to move over to guys, new updates about who's staying and who's going and whatnot is
that transition didn't work super well.
It worked in my head and I totally fumbled it. Is Shane Lee staying at USC for 2023? He announced that last week when he was talking to the media after practice. That's big for USC, and that's another linebacker that you need, considering that linebacker has been an issue. Where it's the interesting thing for SC is that the linebacker core we've talked about before needs an overhaul. And the combination of Shane Lee and Raylan Goforth did not work when Eric Gentry was out. Does Eric Gentry need to be moved to a different position? We've thought might be a thing. Shane Lee still needs to take another step forward, particularly in things like coverage. So him coming back, another year for development there, another year to get his mojo back from his time at Alabama and playing a couple of years off. I think having another season under his belt will help him going into next year. Also, Shane Lee, like I speak about him like he struggled, and he didn't struggle the entire year. He made a lot of plays. It was just a matter of consistency. Like you got to
Mhm.
find consistency with a lot of guys on defense, guys who showed out and then had their struggles. But Shane Lee is going to be one of those guys back at linebacker.
Yeah, I think this is a big keep for USC. Number one, he's a big vocal leader in the locker room, a veteran. You like seeing that. Number two, he is for all of his faults in pass defense, like he is by far the most reliable player on the field USC has at that position for stopping the run. I was watching some like Notre Dame highlights, and
It's probably his best
that
game.
was probably his best game, certainly in run defense, because he brings that sort of a presence in that game in a way that you certainly don't get from Eric Gentry because he's a stick and needs to put on like 20 pounds, and you weren't necessarily getting from Raylan Goforth and the other guys, and Tuasivi Demora and the rest. So I think Shane Lee coming back is huge. He can spend his offseason working on the pass protection, no, sorry, in the pass defense kind of stuff. He'll also be more healthy because he did have that broken hand or wrist or whatever it was that he suffered early in the season. So I think bringing him back is a big plus. You need to add people around him so that if he isn't playing at a high level, then you can replace him with somebody. And that's really like my issue with the performance of the linebackers this past season. The issue was that when guys struggled, there was literally no one to replace them with, apparently, because the guys who were not playing were just flat out never playing. So, yeah, I'd take him. I'm happy to have him back, and we'll see what he can do in year two.
Yeah, absolutely. So that'll be another guy on defense to watch. And remember, outside of the triumvirate of Tui Pelotu, Mekhi Blackman, and Kalen Bullock, he was the only other guy to get sort of mentioned in the all conference list. He was an honorable mention. So, which means he got a vote from somebody, at
Yeah.
least 8 votes, if not multiple
Well,
votes from other Pac-12 coaches.
like I said, he had his moments. As Malcolm in the chat says, he's not going to get faster or more athletic. Absolutely. Absolutely not. You need to continue to upgrade around him. But if you're not going to get worse than Shane Lee, then I think you're in a pretty decent
Yeah,
decent spot going into sort of rebuilding that group.
I think it also helps going into next year knowing that he's not going to be your star Butkus winner, and just know that like he's absolutely a guy that you want in your rotation, 100%.
Yeah.
And with his experience, I think that all matters. It goes back to the Gerard Martinez brick and mortar theory over at
Yes.
USFootball.com. He's a key piece to the mortar.
Yes.
And
And you need those mortar guys. And to be honest, USC wasn't really going to have those
yeah,
with Raylan Goforth leaving if Shane Lee left for the NFL or for
yeah,
whatever comes next. But when it comes down to it, like this is why USC is targeting guys in the transfer portal. This is why like it looks important that USC had Mason Cobb from Oklahoma State visit over the weekend. Like there are additions that need to come in addition to, but keeping Shane Lee is a plus when it comes down to it.
yeah, for sure. Mentioned Tuli Tuipulotu and what's going to go down with him is that he's playing in the bowl. He's playing in the Cotton Bowl. Big for SC. We'll see what happens beyond that because there's still no decision. And that's sort of going to be the case for a lot of these guys. Austin Jones is practicing with the Trojans right now, but no decision on the NFL. Same thing with Jordan Addison, the 2021 Bolitnikoff winner and USC's leading receiver. No word on him for the bowl game or the NFL. Justin Dedich is playing center in the bowl game, of course, because Brett Nealon injured his foot, and no decision on him beyond that. He told reporters doesn't know where he's going to play next year. I read that as in what position he's going to play next year, not like where he's going to play, as in like leaving or anything like that. But that was the quote.
Yeah, it sounded like the reporters certainly took it as he hadn't made an NFL decision, but I also saw the thing about whether or not where he would play on the line. Um, so we'll see on him, but it'll be good for him to get that. I mean, if you're gonna lose your starting center, a Remington Award finalist, to a season-ending injury, then getting to replace him with Justin Dedich is not the worst thing in the world. You can sort of work with Justin Dedich at center, given the way that he's been playing at guard. So we'll see how he does against Tulane.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me that we haven't had any opt-outs for the bowl game, which I think is a testament to Caleb Williams. Oh, but the one thing I didn't add into the rundown, Caleb Williams continues to insist that he will be good to go to play in that bowl game. I continue to be skeptical. But if Caleb wants to
Yeah.
do it, then but if Caleb's fighting to be able to play in that game, it makes it a lot easier for guys like Tuli Tupelotu, Austin Jones, Jordan Addison, who we don't know any of those are definitely playing, but they have not said that they are not playing. I think it goes a long way towards convincing guys to not opt out. You see that with Alabama as well. Bryce Young and Will Anderson are both going to play in a game that everyone thought that they would opt out of. So it's nice to see that USC has guys who are competitive enough to want to go out there and go to battle with Caleb and the rest of those guys. So we'll see. It doesn't sound like Andrew Voorhees is going to play though, because he is injured and or going to the NFL. So
yeah, we'll see how all that comes to be. A week from now, when we have our preview of the Cotton Bowl, it's going to be interesting to see how that goes down, because I sort of envisioned this Cotton Bowl in which SC was going to go and have a bunch of opt-outs and the whole bit, and have not been overly optimistic about SC's chances in the Cotton Bowl because of that, especially given the injury to Caleb Williams, Brett Nealon, and all those guys. Like, I in my bowl confidence picks, I don't have that bowl game high on the confidence picks. We're going to talk about the preview, of course, next week. But if those guys are all going to play, that certainly changes things and makes SC's outlook against Tulane looks significantly better, because
yeah,
on a neutral field at full strength, you would imagine that SC probably like a 2-touchdown favorite over the Green Wave. So other transfer portal stuff to go back to really quick. Notre Dame quarterback Drew Pine committed to ASU.
so USC will see him again.
Yes. We'll see if he throws for 300 yards at the Coliseum again next year. Sorry, that it'll be in Tempe next year.
Is it in Tempe? Oh yeah.
Coastal Carolina defensive end Josiah Stewart, who we had talked about last week as a potential target for SC, he's going to Michigan. And I gotta say, Michigan is absolutely like raking in the transfer portal stuff. They get Josiah Stewart. They get Stanford offensive lineman Miles Hinton, and Drake Nugent. And there's a couple other big guys on the transfer portal list I was looking at earlier that Michigan has gotten from around the country. Look at the Wolverines. Look what happens when you make the playoffs 2 straight years.
I mean, yes, that's the correct answer. But Michigan is doing what I think a lot of people wish that USC would be doing in the trenches, recruiting the transfer portal. They got Ladarius Henderson from Arizona State, who's going to come to Michigan as well on the offensive line. The 2 Stanford offensive linemen. So yeah, they're definitely pulling in. USC needs to get that reputation to the point where they can start pulling in those guys too.
Yeah, they got Ladarius Henderson from ASU. They got Ernest Hausman, who's the number 2 transfer portal rankee, according to 24/7 Sports. So yeah, good on Harbaugh for doing what he needs to do there. Early signing day is coming up on Wednesday, and here is our yearly.
Here's our very sad trombone coverage of the worst thing that college football has done to college football fans since.
I know we say it all
know.
the time, but there's nothing worse than early signing day, because it got moved. I mean, it was created to solve a problem that it is not solving. And it has simply become real signing day, and which has essentially killed off the whole celebration that was signing day, where every February, the first Wednesday in February was the biggest holiday for college football fans. And now signing day is on like a Wednesday when you've got to leave work early so you can go buy your grandma a candle from Macy's.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I'm worried about this candle and not, 4-star edge rusher Braylon Shelby's, letter of intent. But alas, here we are.
Yep.
Early signing day. Um, by the way, question for the chats. And here's and if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, send us an email or something or tweet us. I don't know, anything. Are you, because I have found like the last 2 years that the transfer portal is significantly more compelling as something to talk about, but also to like just in general than normal high school recruiting. Is that just me?
Not for
Like,
me. Well, we
like
give people the chance to reply. For me, I'm absolutely more interested in the transfer portal guys. Part of it too is
is it
because
because we've seen some of those guys before, and there's like this, hot stoviness element
there's a
to
hot
it?
stove in it. Like you watch Dorian Singer do that to USC. Like you've seen some of these guys. You want to see them come to USC. Also, it just feels like, with a couple exceptions, half of the guys that USC has signed, like it's well, okay, it's exciting. I'm not taking it away for anything from any of them, but
Yeah,
like they could also end up in the portal like in a year or two, and then we're gonna be
right.
thinking of like the guys that USC doesn't sign, like Godwin, or Goodwin, the offensive lineman that we were sort of looking at last year. As a Is USC going to get this big offensive lineman, but he goes to Kentucky instead? He's in the portal now, so it's like, well, now you get another stab at him in the portal. Like it just feels like the recruiting class is tenuous commitment. Like it's like they took the soft verbal commit and just sort of did a tone shift from, you got your verbal commit to your locked in signing sort of signing, but that locked in signing
Yeah,
now feels like the verbal commit, because yeah, it just means you're going to theoretically be at USC in 2023, but doesn't guarantee you're going to be there any longer.
yeah. Then the chat here on YouTube is agreeing with that. Tim says transfer portal definitely more exciting. Um, Kenny says I'm with you. Chris says yes, loving the transfer portal action after NIL seemed to be more exciting after that became real. West Texas Mike loved the transfer portal. Your fave says signing day stopped being interesting when crystal balls came out and insiders spoiled announcements. You can see that. Murdy transfer portal, you know what you're getting. Yeah, I this I think that's the sentiment, right? Like, but at the same time, the sad part about this is, as much as the transfer portal, I guess the great irony is like, you can't win a you. I was gonna say you can't win a championship on the transfer, but you
You
can. I
can.
mean, literally, you can. Look at all the guys who, all the like at the high end levels,
I
the
mean,
quarterbacks, right? When
see
you,
LSU
yeah, exactly.
2019.
So yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is the vast majority of your players are still coming from the high school ranks.
Yes.
That is still the bread and butter.
Yeah.
That is still the bloodline of college football. That is still like the foundation of everything. And I feel like the transfer portal stuff, even though it is extremely important, especially at the high end positions when you look at quarterbacks and all of that. And I'm not saying that it's not exciting or it doesn't have merit, because surely it does. We talked about Dorian Singer for a solid 10 minutes. All of that. And it's like recruiting just high school players is so important, and coaches will probably tell you it's like so important too. Like, and I feel like it just gives not nearly the same amount of buzz and coverage anymore. And I know that the guys over at 24/7 Sports are working their ass off, so it's
We're
not like they're not doing their job. It's just like it doesn't have the same buzz anymore.
Yeah, we're also not like we're also well, we are the target audience, but we're not necessarily. We've never really been recruitniks. So there are
Right,
like
but there
there
was
are
a
still
time where
people
we knew every single
that is
commitment and could like
well, but this is
rattle off where they were from and all that stuff now.
this
And now
is
I look at it,
why
I'm like, I have no idea who Malachi Crawford is.
but to me that's less to do with the transfer portal and more to do with the early signing period because we don't have time. The season
What's
just
the
ended.
combination?
The season ended 2 weeks ago. We barely just finished up our hey, the season's over episodes. We sort of have moved on to bowl discussions. We should spend all of December talking about the bowl game. Instead,
Yeah.
we're talking about this where there was a lead up, and I was talking to somebody on Twitter about this, like about how much I hate the early signing day. As a relative casual recruitnik, like as someone who will pay attention when there isn't sort of the other stuff going on, it's it was nice to have the January lead up. There was a building momentum. So you could spend all of January learning names, understanding the importance of these players, getting invested in whether or not they were going to come to USC, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, now in order to do that, you have to be doing that during the season. I don't got time for that.
Right. Well,
As Malcolm in the chat said, like you know, why listen to sort of recruiting stuff? You care about the guys when they get there. And it's like, yeah, I think to me that's always been the case. But like in January, when you don't have football, when you're feeling the absence of football, then yeah, you start to pay attention. Like, oh, this 3-star guy, there's like a lot of buzz about how he's way better than that star ranking, or like this
Yeah.
5-star guy is like being pursued by everyone, or like did um uh so and so like take a picture from somewhere? Are they in LA? Like all of that kind of stuff. Did someone
The Elon
see
Marshall
somebody?
stuff was
Yeah, Iman Marshall.
wild.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's like, is he taking an official visit to UCLA or something like that? And then there's like the stuff with I'm blanking on names at the moment, which I'm not. But where one of the message board people just saw someone at the airport decked out in Oregon gear, and it was like that stuff happened, and it was just like this is the craziness that gets
Are you
you
talking about
invested.
DeAnthony Thomas?
DeAnthony Thomas,
Yeah.
yes. And so like those were the things that you built up towards in January. We don't get that in January anymore. So we don't learn the name. Like
You know what the
we
other
don't
thing?
get invested in any of these guys anymore because there's not time to do it unless you're
I
following recruiting in April, which
I
you know,
blame the summer.
well, summer does that too.
Because when, and maybe this was just I got involved in in uh, working for Rena Troy and all that stuff at the time that we started doing this and all this, is when the opening was a big thing and it was on TV.
Yeah.
And you would watch on ESPNU all the stuff in the opening, and so you would know all the guys before the season. And then they would show the 7-on games on ESPNU. And I remember watching the like 2013 class, the one that epically imploded for SC. But like you'd spend the entire summer, or not the entire summer, like a solid week or so in July, watching Max Brown, throw to these other guys. And like, are they going to get anyone at signing day? Like what's going to happen with there's Jalen Ramsey, and there's so and so, and
But you learn
the 2 years later there's Porter Gustin, and you're seeing what Porter Gustin does at the opening and all this. And so you knew the guys before the season,
you learn their names,
and then during the season everyone kind of pauses their recruiting, and then it ramps back up in January, and so much about these guys by the time you get to signing day. And like, yeah, now the opening has been absolutely like neutered. And I don't even, does it still exist anymore?
well, now there's like a million different camps and a million different
well, there's
rituals,
always been like
which I
Rising
don't
Stars and all that stuff, but like
yeah,
they're not on TV.
which I don't mind that kind of stuff, but like I want the time. This is the brilliance of the NFL. The brilliance of the NFL is that every month of the year there is something going on with the NFL. There is some thing that can draw your eye to what the league is doing.
Right.
And my issue with college football is like they owned February after relative to like the Super Bowl. But like they owned it. They owned it, and it was a huge deal, and it was the thing that occupied minds. And now they have neutered it. What they should do is have the early signing period in the summer, in
Mhm.
August or June,
Yeah.
and then have the signing period in February or something akin to that,
Yeah, and
and
where
then
the only out to your LOI
is a coach moving.
is a coach moving. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, I we we can only complain for so much.
Yeah.
Signing day, of course, coming up to you on Wednesday. So we're going to run down the commitments for the Trojans right now. As it stands over on 24/7 Sports, the Trojans have 20 commitments, headlined by Malachi Nelson over at Los Alamitos and Makai Lemon, the two 5 stars, along with Zach Branch. Um, from Bishop Gorman. 5 stars, 2 receivers, and a quarterback there. Braylon,
That's your next generation.
yeah, absolutely. Malachi Nelson is someone who you would imagine would replace Caleb Williams, even
Mhm.
though Miller Moss probably will have something to say with that too. Braylon Shelby, the edge rusher out of Friendswood, Texas. Great name, Friendswood. Great name for a city. Tackett Curtis, probably outside of Malachi Nelson, is Tackett Curtis the most look forward to recruits
Certainly the
of
most high.
SC's commitments?
Yes, he's been. I mean, he's the recruit that you just heard about all fall,
Yeah.
about how much he was tearing it up in high school. He was the player of the year in a million different places, and just looks like a gamer. So very exciting to see you seeing him compared to like Matt Grudegood and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. Like USC really needs him to come in and be really good because he's at the position that USC desperately needs an instant impact star.
Yeah. Quentin Joyner's a running back, 4 star running back out of Manor, Texas. He committed back in April. Elijah Page from Pinnacle in Phoenix, Arizona. He committed in October. There's
Offensive
Malachi.
tackle.
What was that?
Offensive tackle.
What did I say?
You didn't say it. You didn't
Oh,
give a position.
yeah, he's an offensive
I think
tackle.
it adds layers to big position of need. USC got a 4 star, so it's
Yeah.
good.
Malachi Crawford out of Pacifica in Oxnard is a 4 star corner. Marion Peterson, 4 star running back out of Wichita Falls, Texas. There's Jacoby Lane, 4 star wide receiver out of Red Mountain High in Mesa, Arizona. He committed to the Trojans back in August. Currently being pursued by Oregon and Texas, with the Ducks being the crystal ball favorites. So
Yeah.
looks like a flip opportunity there for the Ducks.
Yeah, he's going to be one of the guys to watch on Wednesday to see where he signs.
Yeah, and then the rest of the class, all at the 3 star level. You got safety Christian Pierce, inside offensive lineman Amos Talalele, edge rusher David Peavy, defensive lineman Sam Green, uh, offensive lineman Micah Benuelos, offensive lineman Alani Noah, athlete Cade Eldridge, offensive tackle Tobias Raymond, defensive lineman Dejan Lafitte, and defensive lineman and the newest commitment for the Trojans, Elijah Hughes, a 3 star linebacker, defensive lineman that committed just over the weekend. He is not rated in the 24/7 Sports rankings, and he's a 3 star composite guy, the 34th ranked commitment in the Virginia state rankings.
Yeah, if you want to ask where's the beef is in there. The beef is in the group of 3 stars that USC is going to try and hit on some diamonds in the rough here. You got to like what you see from guys like Michael Benuelos and a few of those other 3 star guys. If USC can hit on even just 2 of the 4 offensive linemen that they have in this class, um, you'll feel pretty good. You'll feel pretty good about that. So it's going to be about whether or not USC evaluated well, whether or not USC can develop these guys well, and how long it takes for them to move into a role. So we'll see on those guys. But and defensive linemen, same thing. Lafitte and Hughes. If you can get those guys going, if you can prove that you evaluated well, if Shanua can do some work, you'll be feeling good. But you are dealing with 3 stars who remember, don't devalue a 3-star. Just understand that 3 stars hit less often.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that comes down to Wednesday. We'll see how everything comes to be there, which leads us into a couple of guys who are undecided, uncommitted. Defensive lineman Mateo. You can say it better. Go for it.
Uyangalele.
There you go.
Yeah.
Got it.
Brother of DJ Uyangalele.
Yeah, from uh, DJ went to Bosco. Where's Mateo at now?
I
Is
thought
he
he
still
was
at
at Bosco.
He's still at
Am
Bosco.
I was not prepared for the question. I thought he was at Bosco.
Yeah, I usually write these things down. This tells you how prepared we are.
Yeah, St. John Bosco confirmed.
Yeah, currently down to USC, Ohio State, and Oregon. Look for the decision coming up on Wednesday for that one. He's absolutely someone you want, a big-bodied lineman who can get out of there and highly ranked. All that.
Yeah, the big question is, can you beat Ohio State? You beat Oregon. It seems like Ohio State's the team to beat.
Yeah, and other guys to watch: tight end Walker Lyons, former Stanford commit, probably a guy who might wait until February, as well as Deuce Robinson, probably another February guy. So
yeah, another tight end.
Mateo's the one to watch on Wednesday, along with Jacoby Lane.
Yeah,
and then for all your recruiting stuff, go follow our friends over at uscfootball.com.
Yeah, yeah, they're the experts. We're just the armchairs. Like, I hope we get that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. All right. Let's get into the mailbag. We've got a long time. Head over to the mailbag, and if you're joining us here on YouTube, fill it up. Ask your questions. Put the word question over at the beginning. Helps us find the questions and sort them out. Let's do this. Cameron says, "What are the chances with Ford? Do you think from Oklahoma State as a transfer portal guy?"
It's so hard to say with the transfer portal guys. It's all very quick that happens. It's even more difficult than trying to predict the actual recruits. But he's at a position that you want. Edge rusher at Oklahoma State. He had been productive in 2020 before he missed. Sorry, in 2022 before he missed the one season with injury. So we'll see. USC already has Jamil Muhammad committed at that sort of position. They continue to pursue guys like Josiah Stewart and guys like Dasan McCullough, who is committed to Oklahoma now. Stewart obviously committed to Michigan, like we talked about earlier. So it's clear that USC wants to build up that position. They were light at the edge rusher. We know this because they converted Julian Simon there, even though that never made any sense to me. So that one is going to be something where if they're pursuing him, you got to hope that they can lock that in. But also, transfer guys have a lot of different reasons to end up where they end up. Yeah. Now, the ideal here is that Trace Ford and Mason Cobb become a package deal where you get sort of both Oklahoma State guys, the way that you got like the 3 Arizona guys, just sort of pile up on them, because those would be.
I like Trace Ford as a name.
Trace Ford's a good name.
Remember Lonnie Ford? Yeah, that was pre-Alicia time.
I don't remember Lonnie Ford.
Yeah, former, believe he was a LA Avenger. Yeah, way back in the day.
No.
The more you know. Other question. Let's go from to West Texas Mike in all caps. When is SC going to spend some money and get some defensive players in here? I don't know. The SC's trying. SC's certainly trying. Christian Roland Wallace is one of those guys coming in from Arizona. We'll see what happens with Mateo.
There was
knowing how that's gone and how Big Dave not shy from tweeting things about how NIL is the most important thing. So
yeah, Big Dave can have his opinions. Certainly with
he certainly has a few.
It's certainly with his kids, and if he wants his kids to be making money out of NIL, then more power to him. I believe in NIL, and I believe in paying these kids. There was some talk last week, and I wish I could remember who said it, but there was a sort of radio show video going out that sort of hit on the head my feelings about this whole, like, when is USC going to get out there and pay all these players? Which is really funny because left, right, and center, you see Utah fans and everybody else responding to the Dorian Singer news is like, oh, that's USC, but spelled with the $sign. Like, there goes USC paying all that money and stuff. And it's like, the fact of the matter is, people inside USC are not acting like USC is paying dudes to come. Like, that's not what's happening. USC has a collective plus, which is essentially USC is moving forward with the idea that they are not going to pay players directly. That is not the way that the USC is trying to do. That's why USC fans tried to start a collective of their own, because the model that USC has gone
and then
with,
the guy died,
and
right?
then the guy died,
Yeah.
which ended that pursuit. The collective plus idea is to make earning opportunities available to players, i.e., all the endorsements you can find, we're going to try and find them, give you opportunities, all that kind of stuff. That's where Caleb Williams is making his money. He's making his money by having his access to endorsements through beats and through all those kinds of stuff. But the fact of the matter is that, like, USC is not just going to take a bag of money and set it down on the table and say, here, you know, Tony Grimes or whoever it is, like,
Yeah.
come to USC. That's not the way it works. USC is going to sell itself the way it has always sold itself with this new adjustment. USC is going to sell itself location. USC is going to sell itself competitiveness. USC is going to sell itself legacy, marketing, education, all of the above. And that's just not going to change. The difference is, if you choose to come to USC while also taking hold of all the things that USC has recruited itself with in the past, you can also take advantage of their NIL structure, which you can have complaints about the NIL structure all you want, but like, that's where the money's coming from. So we've also seen what happens to teams that take the opposite approach, like Texas A&M, where it's just like, here, have $1 million or whatever, and then you end up in a position where they have 25 dudes in the transfer portal because stuff happens. So I would rather USC continue to do the approach that they're doing, especially when it comes to transfers, where we've been told the number one thing that they're looking for with transfers is cultural fit. Like, are you a competitor? Do you want to win? Do you want to sort of be at the top of your game? If your number one priority is NIL, I don't think that ingratiates you to Lincoln Riley and his staff. So take that for what it is.
Well, I still think it's obviously a huge factor, but the other thing about NIL is, like, so many of those endorsement things are just like, it's putting you in a position to go sort of get the bag yourself. Right? Yeah. Come to SC where there are going to be endorsement opportunities, and just it's going to be here.
Yeah.
All right. Cameron in Frisco, Texas. With the Dorian Singer commitment, does this mean the possible smoke? What does this mean about the possible smoke of Marvin Harrison Jr. entering the portal is a hoax?
So, okay, I have thoughts on this, Michael. Number one, my instinct is to say, yes, absolute hoax, huge, giant hoax. Why would anyone believe this? Like, outside of wishful thinking, it doesn't make any sense. It literally makes no sense for Marvin Harrison. Number one, to be thinking this way when he's in the playoff and going to be going out there and trying to win a national championship in a couple of weeks' time. That doesn't make any sense to me. That sounds like hogwash. Number two is, if it's about wanting to play with Caleb Williams, then sure, angels in the outfield gif applies here. Like, it could happen. But when it comes down to it, like, Marvin Harrison should be focusing on bigger things right now. And if he's not, then I've got questions otherwise. So I'm not banking on that one. But then again, when I heard the Jordan Addison rumors initially, I thought, yeah, that's a bunch of crock. And then it turned out to be true. So whatever.
Yeah, Ohio State is one of the places you need to be as a wide receiver. So yeah, there's no. I will believe that when I see it. Cameron also says, what are your thoughts on Reggie Bush's IG post on Saturday regarding the NCAA and his treatment towards him? Cameron from Hutchins.
So if Cameron, if you're referring to the kind of cryptic one he put out there about a cover up, to me it was just very cryptic. And until something more is produced, then I don't know. Unless there's something else that was going on that that I missed.
Yeah, I didn't see it. I don't know anything about a cover up or anything like that.
I mean, I think
There's
Reggie is
hypocrisy more than anything, right?
it's yeah. I think Reggie is right to have a beef with the NCAA. The NCAA was ridiculous in their handling of that whole situation, but there's also got to be sort of proof in the pudding. So.
Murdy says, do you see Eric Gentry moving to rush end if SC gets more traditional linebackers through the portal?
And it's interesting because USC has mostly been sort of successful in pursuing the rush ends. Like that's who they got into the final two with Josiah Stewart. They got Muhammad. They continue to pursue a couple other guys heavily, Trace Ford being one of them. So to me, it seems like that's not part of the plan. But also, I feel like with Eric Gentry, there is going to come a time, and it might not be yet. He has a couple more years of eligibility. It might not be time yet to nix the freakish linebacker sort of experiment that they're doing with him.
Yeah,
but there will come a time they're going to have to make a decision on it, and I don't know when that'll be.
He's such an awkward tweener in that sense.
Yeah.
That I don't know where he needs to be.
Well, you need more inside linebackers in order to even make that move.
Well, yeah. Like I think just based on team need, I think he's got to stay where he is. Also, like you still have Corey Foreman, and like, well, how's Corey Foreman gonna be moved in all these things?
Yeah,
is he just gonna be an end?
Is he gonna be an edge, or are they gonna move him inside?
Yeah, I don't know. And
but
Corey Foreman played, like middle linebacker in high school at one point. So like, does he get? We saw him drop coverage and win the UCLA game. I don't know, like what's gonna happen. Right?
Can you imagine if Corey Foreman was the answer for USC at linebacker?
Anything is worth a shot at this point.
All I know is that Corey Foreman, to me, is mirroring one of the issues that was had with Drake Jackson for much of his career. It's that, like, where does he fit best? Where, like, should he be inside? Should he be outside? Do you want him to put on weight? Do you want him to lose weight? Are you going to every different offseason have him change which direction he's swinging on the weight situation? And I don't know. It's hard to say. Drake Jackson has gone to the NFL and looks like a future star for the 49ers. So at a more traditional sort of defensive end role, is it a situation where you can't play Corey Foreman as a hybrid? You can't have that front as a hybrid and have him succeed? I think that might be entirely possible.
Yeah, I don't know. A lot of moving parts for Alex Grinch to figure out. Too many questions that I'm glad I don't have to have the answers for.
Yeah.
Randy says, how does SC part with players that don't fit their plans? They aren't willing to part with their scholarships or go into the portal. The scholarship math ain't adding up.
You have frank conversations with players. I think that's what we've seen from USC. We've seen from schools around the country. That was sort of the discussion around the Deion Sanders video that came out a few weeks ago that, like, to me, just, it was a bad look to have in public. But, we've also heard that similar things were said behind closed doors at USC when Lincoln Riley arrived. So to me, you have those conversations behind closed doors. And now with the advent of the transfer portal, I think it's probably in the best interest of the player too. If they're getting, what was the word that people used to apply to it? Getting processed. Processed out, then go find your next opportunity.
I think SC is willing to part with their scholarships. I think we've seen that. I mean, Raylan Goforth is a prime example. If SC was not willing to let Raylan Goforth go, he wouldn't have gone.
Yeah.
They would have done anything they could have to keep him, even if him going is completely on his own accord of, like, he wants to go and get a fresh new start. they would have done anything that they could to re-recruit him and all of that, right? Like, and maybe they did, and maybe we just don't know about that. But I think that, absolutely, there's been, Julian Simon was one of those guys too, where guys that we think that looked, he looked really good in practice, and I think that he's someone who has a future playing college football. But if it's not at SC, then it's not at SC. So I think Lincoln Riley is willing, and he's going to have to be, considering that they keep bringing on guys at position of need. And you look at the receiving core. I mean, you keep bringing in dudes. Someone's going to have to go somewhere.
Well, and dudes will also see the writing on the wall. I mean, I think that's what Raylan Goforth had to have thought. Like,
right.
He must have known or been told or figured out, whatever, that they were going to target linebackers to replace him. So there will always be those guys who cling and hang on for dear life, and it's within their rights because they have a 4-year scholarship when they come to USC. But coaches tend to figure these things out. That's what I would say.
I think for a lot of it, though, that those guys that you could mention who are the clinging to their spot, I think for the most part they were gone when Lincoln Riley came in.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing is, you can only cling so hard if the coach really wants you out.
Right.
And make it happen. So
Yeah.
that's the dirty side of college football.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that people were critical of, perennial nice guy Clay Helton is maybe not enough of that was being done. I've always said that in order to be a winner at this level, you have to be ruthless. And my point about Pete Carroll was always, yeah, people love fun lovey-dovey Pete Carroll, but he was absolutely ruthless. And Nick Saban is ruthless. And I think that Lincoln Riley has shown that his aspirations are to a degree that he's also willing to be ruthless.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have left Oklahoma if he wasn't.
Andrew asks, who's starting in the box as you see now on defense, including transfers to date? Lee, Gentry, and who?
Lee, Gentry, and best case scenario, Tackett Curtis, Tuasi Namora in a lesser desired scenario.
So if we're doing the everybody but the secondary on defense, I think until he says he's not coming back, then Thule's a defensive end. Your defensive tackle it's got to be the Bars from Arizona.
Yeah. Or and then your nose tackle, you sort of have to stick with Stanley Taufu unless you add.
No, I think Bars could be that guy, right? He played nose at Arizona. I think if you're going out to get him, it's because you think he can start.
Okay, so then your DT is one of Tyrone Taleni, Dejon Benton,
probably Taleni, being the guy who really came on at the end of the year. Yeah. And then your linebackers are Gentry and Lee until Tackett Curtis can do something. And maybe we're putting too much pressure on Tackett Curtis.
I changed my mind. Best case scenario is Shane Lee, Eric Gentry, and Rajon Davis making a move up the depth chart. Rajon Davis living up to his talent would be the best possible thing for USC's defense next year, because then you take the pressure off of Tackett Curtis to be great immediately. Which I think is unfair to any true freshman coming in and transitioning. And then if like Rajon Davis is sort of slowly able to take over a starting role next to an Eric Gentry that is working out in that position and healthy, with Shane Lee slowly but surely becoming the third option instead, then I think you got to feel pretty good. The problem is that we spent this entire season saying, well, where's Rajon Davis? Where's Rajon Davis? And it just never happened. So
right.
Banking on it at this point, I don't know. We'll have to see. I mean, if we're talking dream scenarios with transfers, you get Mason Cobb, and then he is you sort of have Carson Tabarachi, though, is also going to be a guy who sort of we overlooked because he was injured all year. But maybe he comes up and does some damage. But yeah, if you've got Gentry, Lee, and Mason Cobb, and then you've got Rajon Davis and Tabarachi and maybe another sort of wild card guy coming in and being able to contribute, you feel a lot better about that unit. The problem is like the sure things involved in that unit are very minimal.
Yeah,
your surest thing is Eric Gentry, and he's not even a sure thing.
right.
Like,
Well,
we're not even sure he can
but
play the position.
this is the frustrating part for me to like just understanding the Alex Grinch defense. Part of this is that they just don't release the depth chart every week, and I think it's made it a little bit harder to track. And there's just been so many different packages that they ran as the year went on. So many guys, and part of it is you end up with this fluctuation of eligibility too, that it makes it difficult to figure out. Like, we don't know what the status of Joey Pelotu, right? We assume that Peely is gone. We assume, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I think that plays a huge role here. You don't know what's going to really go on with the rush end position, or how Corey Foreman is going to be,
yeah.
worked.
Well, again, things that if you want to like build a dream scenario for USC next year, it's Corey Foreman having the sort of just awakening moment.
I think it's Corey Foreman taking the big step forward. It's Tackett Curtis being a like plug and play guy from day one,
being Matt Grudegood on day one.
And I think it's Damani Jackson
being healthy and
being the guy at corner.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can we just go through the linebackers real quick that we expect to be on the roster for USC in the coming year? Expect in very small letters that we cannot verify. Rajon Davis, Eric Gentry, Chris Thompson, Carson Tabarachi, Garrison Madden, the super quick freshman from this past year that I believe was also injured, Tuasivi Namora, Shane Lee, and
Eric Gentry.
I said. And a transfer or two.
Well, there's Muhammad coming in, and if you consider a rush end a linebacker or not.
Yeah, I'm just classifying those guys separately. I'm thinking the two inside linebacker positions, the Mike and the Will. Who's going to play the Mike and the Will? Because the rush end will figure itself out. It's sort of the way that I'm thinking of it. But and then you've got Tackett Curtis coming in, and then is there any other
where
linebacker?
Does he slide? Is he a Mike or is he a Will?
My immediate guess would be Will, to be honest, but also it's very difficult to predict that kind of thing with high school guys who were playing who were playing like hybrid, go out and be the best defender on the field kind of positions like Tackett Curtis was. Like, was he a safety? Was he a linebacker? Was he just a Tackett Curtis? Like, Tackett Curtis is playing the position that, like, ideally
he's playing the Tackett Curtis.
He's playing the Tackett Curtis. He's playing the Talanoa Hufanga, where it's like, you're so much better than everyone else. Just go out and make plays wherever the heck you need to make plays from.
Also known as the Troy Polamalu.
The
David Gibson.
Yeah.
Another David Gibson, another pre-Alicia guy. Yeah. USC Football for Life says USC should be looking at Steele from Ball State. Any word if they have interest? Be a shame. He's a beast. With transfer portal stuff, I think it's so hard to, like, all these dudes could be somebody, right?
Yeah, I believe Carson Steele from Ball State is on USC's radar, according to Gerard Martinez, but I don't know if he was one of the guys who visited this past weekend.
I went to Ball State, right? Because he can ball. Yeah. All right. Randy says, have you heard rumors of players leaving Ohio State after the playoffs? Again, we talked about that with Harrison. I wouldn't hold your breath.
That when I see it, guys, I just don't see.
Randy says, do you think the players coming in the 2023 cycle will have as much as an impact as the ones that came in 2022? And how much of an impact and how much of a leap could that help SC going forward?
It's going to be hard to match the impact of someone like Caleb Williams when you have Caleb Williams coming back. But
beyond, like, I don't think it's possible considering the change that SC had. Like, in terms of, like, They SC had to bring in so many transfers last year. I don't think they're ever going to get to that point where they rely on as many transfers in a single year again. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So yeah, I wouldn't hold my breath. Alex says with Dante Moore coming into UCLA, do you think that an arms race is developing between the two schools? I think the arms race is certainly always wanted to be there, but this is still SC, and given the way that Chip Kelly has a love-hate relationship with recruiting, I don't think you can say that the arms race has been there. If the arms race was going to be there, then UCLA would have done their job to take care of business when SC had that 5-year period where they didn't care about recruiting at the top level, or maybe they didn't, not that they didn't care, but they didn't recruit at the top level that they should have been. UCLA never did anything in the last decade to take a step forward to recruit. They never made good on SC sanctions. They never made good on that one year that SC was like the worst class in the Pac-12. UCLA's class didn't do anything to make up for that. So, no, I think that there will be an arms race when I see it. I need to see it to believe it.
Yeah.
Signing a high-end quarterback, to me, that doesn't do it. There's only so many quarterbacks.
It's not like UCLA hasn't done that before, signing a high-end quarterback when USC also signed a high-end quarterback. They did it with
Rosen.
With Rosen.
DTR was a highly ranked guy.
Yeah. So,
I mean, they got DTR in 1874, but which has been a while since then. But all right. Kenny says, Michael, what's your Jim Carrey take? You guys don't want to hear
it. You just hearing you say that means I don't want to hear it. Nope.
Yeah.
My Jim Carrey take is I tend to enjoy his movies. Liar Liar is amazing.
Oh God. I liked The Mask when I was like 6.
The Pen is Blue is still one of my favorite all-time scenes of comedy.
I don't think there's another Jim Carrey movie that
the pen that I'm holding in my hand is
Ace Ventura. Terrible. Utterly just.
I don't think that movie ages particularly well, but also the second Ace Ventura, another one of my favorite all-time comedic scenes, where he's crawling out the mechanical rhino, and the kid thinks he's giving birth. Classic.
See, when you're someone like me who has a high standard for comedy, like we're talking Curb, Seinfeld,
and
Veep, like everything else, it's just not good. Sorry, Jim Carrey, not funny. There's another famous comedic actor of our childhood.
I swear to God, if you slander Robin Williams right now, I'm gonna throw something at you.
All right, that'll end the podcast. Glenn says, "What do I think of your new haircut? It's good. It's great. Yeah, big fan." All right, we're out of here.
A lot lighter. Nice to not have a whole mane of hair.
Yeah, we'll see you. We'll be back to Thursday to talk about the sign day and all that stuff. So until then, we will see you. See ya.
See ya.